as Debbie just said, it's a very busy time of year, so we appreciate your time. And I'm hopeful that I might be able to share one or two useful points with you today and make it worth your time of joining. So I'm just going to see if I can start the slideshow now. So hopefully you guys can all see this slideshow. So yeah, I'm speaking to you from Leeds, where I live. I work in Bradford as a GP. So welcome to you all from wherever you come across the country. If people just want to put in the chat where they're from and say hi, that would be lovely. But you don't feel that you need to do that. So I have been asked to speak today about managing migraine in the winter time. We have cold weather, we have the flu season, we have loads of fun and festivities going on, which is all great, but it can be a real challenge for migraine. So I might be able to say one or two things to make this period a little bit more fun, a little bit less stressful today. So hopefully that's what we'll do. So first of all, I'm going to cover why wintertime is so difficult. There are quite a lot of reasons for this. And I think it helps us to understand why we're so troubled. And then, hopefully we can build on that knowledge and use it to our advantage and learn how to survive and thrive in the wintertime. So I shall be talking about how we take care of ourselves from a sort of self-care and well-being point of view, as well as different medications and treatments. And then I have a little section on when to see your GP, when to sort of worry, and hopefully a few hints and tips on how to navigate the consultation, because we are all aware of how challenging getting into the healthcare system is at the moment. So let's think about why our migraines really don't like festivities. So if we go back several million years and think about the evolution of the human brain on the plains of Africa, if you had a really hypervigilant brain, you were a great survival advantage. So in this kind of environment, if you could see your food, or if you could see things that wanted you to be their food, you were going to be the ones that survived. And so fast forward several million years, and we're now seeing this. And somebody who's got a hypervigilant brain really this is not what we like. This is too much stimulation. It's really triggering. So I shall move on.
Hi, Kay. Sorry, your slides aren't moving. So we're still on the first slide. I don't know if it's
Okay.
because you're not in presenter
Oh,
mode.
I'm so sorry. Right, let me just see what we
Okay.
can do about
Wasn't
that.
sure if it was me not keeping up, but
But nobody can see them.
I
Right,
don't think
okay.
so. We can see the
Um,
first slide, but
can you? But
they've
nothing
not been
else after
moving.
that. Right,
No.
okay. That's funny. Um, do you want to share my slides for me, Debbie?
Yeah,
And
I
then
can do that.
yeah,
Okay, just bear with us,
I'll
everyone.
stop my share. Okay,
There we go.
that's great. Yeah, so this is how our brains were initially. Having a hypervigilant brain here in this kind of environment would be fantastic. And then Debbie, if you just move to the next slide, please. But as I say, now we're faced with this. That is just horrible for migraine. So next slide, please. We will not dwell on that one. So as well as stimulation, there's quite a lot of other things that the migraine brain really doesn't like in the wintertime. We often don't sleep so well. There's lots of reasons for that. We are more busy, dashing around. We have social engagements. Our family, kids have social engagements. We end up eating later at night, maybe drinking more alcohol. That affects our sleep, and poor sleep is one of the exacerbating factors for migraine. We're really busy around this time of year. It's a time where there are lots of people wanting to get together for social engagements. There are jobs to do. There are school plays to go and watch. There are older people that you might care for to take to do things so that they can have a nice time. There's maybe gifts to think about, gifts to buy, gifts to wrap, gifts to take to people, cards to write. There's just so much going on. It's a lot that all comes at once. Our diet can change. We might not eat so healthily. We might have more fizzy drinks, more alcohol. It can be a time of financial worry, and that leads to additional stress. And that self-care time just gets squeezed out. The weather's colder, it means that we don't feel like going out and exercising, and it's a time where viruses tend to start to show their faces. So if we move on to the next slide, please, about viruses. So migraine doesn't like viruses either, as well as all these other things. If we become poorly with a virus, we often become dehydrated, which is a trigger. We don't sleep so well. That's another trigger. We don't eat so well because we don't feel like it. That having low glucose is a trigger. We get lots of muscular aches and pains because of the virus, and that can, again, sort of the muscular aches and pains in the neck can then start triggering off our migraines. And there's also, we think, probably a direct effect of the virus on the brain, or it may be that the virus causes inflammatory changes that are another trigger for migraine. The full mechanisms of why viruses give us worsening migraines or trigger migraines isn't fully understood. COVID-19 was a funny one. There are actually case reports of some people developing COVID and their migraine going into remission. But sadly, those are few and far between. And there are also a lot of people who get viruses, particularly COVID, who then trigger an exacerbation of migraine or start developing migraine for the first time ever. It is important that if you're poorly with a high fever and you feel really unwell and you have a headache and it's different to your normal migraine, that you don't just put it down to your normal migraine. If you're worried it doesn't seem right, go to see the doctor. And because it is important to get checked to make sure you don't have anything rare like viral or bacterial meningitis, which could be more important. Next slide, please, Debbie. So we've got all these potentially exacerbating factors going on, but actually, we want to have a good time and enjoy this time of year. So how do you think that we could maybe do it? So I think planning is the big key, and just being prepared to adapt a little bit, unfortunately, until the clever scientists like Professor Goadsby and his co-collaborators hopefully one day find us a cure for migraine. So one thing which I think probably most people with migraine will automatically do, because we're all quite meticulous people, is start writing lists. So if you get the calendar out and you think, right, okay, I need to travel to see somebody on this date, think back. So when am I going to pack? And when am I going to plan what I'm going to pack? Or if you're going to entertain and have people around for a meal, think, okay, so what am I going to cook? When am I going to cook? And make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to have some rest and relaxation in between the commitments that you've got, and try not to overcommit. If you do have certain triggers around this time of year that you know is going to make you have a migraine, it is okay to say no and to avoid them. So, for example, if going to watch the Christmas lights is incredibly triggering, it's all right not to do that. Or going to firework displays, it's okay not to do that. Drinking alcohol, it's okay not to do that. People are really very understanding. I know we all feel a sense of, well, we can't just show that we don't want to do these things, but it's okay, and it's okay to ask for help. So give yourselves permission to do that. Next slide, please. So a lot of self-care is now sort of really becoming a lot more mainstream. And we know that as well as sort of the medical side of managing migraine, that looking after our own physical and mental well-being is just really vital. We need to look after our mind and our body. That it works hard for us all day, and we need to put a little bit of time back into looking after that as well. So just think about making time for yourself, making time for exercise, making time for relaxation. Think about eating regularly, not skipping meals. The the brain in migraine likes to be really quite kept very steady. It likes a nice regular supply of glucose throughout the day. So if you do skip breakfast, then you're kind of going from your dinner time the night before all the way through to lunchtime without any carbohydrates to help your brain. So having regular meal times is important, and having plenty of fluids. We usually say about 1.5 to 2 litres a day. Oh, sorry, we might have just moved on with the slides too early. That's it. Great, thanks. And having a bit of a regular sleep pattern is also important. A lot of us do struggle with sleep. It's a common thing to have a little bit of insomnia. About 1 in 3 people gets insomnia sometimes. And I think more people with migraine seem to struggle with sleep. Give yourself time to sleep, and obviously make sure that you concentrate on the sleep hygiene side of things, whereby you have some relaxation time before bed, take any stimulating things out of the bedroom. But if you're still struggling, there's a really good free app called Sleepio, which can be downloaded if you have anybody who has an NHS number can download it. It's a cognitive behavioural therapy app, which is really well respected amongst the sleep psychologists. It's not something to perhaps embark on just now before Christmas, because it takes a little bit of time. So there's quite a lot of exercises and commitment involved. It's sort of several months of going through the resources. It's not a quick fix, but it's really good. Another thing is smoking cessation. If you are a smoker, smoking is quite a big trigger for migraine. Although maybe not right now, it could be a nice New Year's resolution. So we can sort of look towards positive things that we can do around this time of year. Keep warm so that the nasty viruses don't get in, and have a little bit of think about how we can actively manage any stresses, any depression, any anxiety. And I shall come on to how we do that on the next slide, please. So avoiding stress. One good site that I have found is the NHS Every Mind Matters website. It's got quite a lot of really good resources on there. There's including one called a personalised mind plan, which it's a 4-week program, and they can email resources through to you. You get little emails if you just sort of put a target in of what you want to do. You can also refer for free NHS talking therapies without the need to go and see your GP. So that's available for the information on that site as well. There's some CBT which you can do yourself online without the need to go and actually speak to a psychotherapist or psychologist. So CBT stands for cognitive behavioural therapy. It's a technique which I don't fully understand because I'm not a psychologist, but essentially we all have brain networks and brain pathways, and they become quite ingrained, and we have thoughts which trigger certain feelings and emotions, and we kind of go round and get stuck in a rut sometimes, and can generate quite negative thoughts from or feelings from our thoughts. The cognitive behavioural therapists work with us to reprogram those pathways, and so the brain can function more positively. So it's really, really helpful. Many people find that cognitive behavioural therapy is a lot more helpful to them if they have some mild anxiety or depression compared to taking medications. And then there's the Reading Agency have a Reading Well site, which has some excellent books and digital resources for managing stress, anxiety and depression as well. So that's also worth a look if that's something relevant to you. Next slide, please. So we also have a lot of really good charities, helplines and communities to help people with mental health issues. So Samaritans has a 24-hour helpline that's open every single day of the year. If you're in crisis, any thoughts to hurt yourself or self-harm at any time of day or night. The Mental Health Foundation Stress, that is a really good charity, and so is the Stress Management Society. Next slide, please. So Then I'm going to just move on to the next part of the talk, which is more medical than self-help, and when to go and see the doctor. So this is a picture of one of the branch surgeries that the headache clinic that I work for has up in Wibsey in Bradford. Next slide, please. So medication. I think probably a lot of people already know that when we take medication for our migraines, we've got two types of medications. We've got the rescue medication, and that's the tablets that we have with us all the time in case we get a migraine attack and we have to take them quickly. And then some people will also be on Preventive medication. Those are working in the background, taking every day to try and reduce the number of attacks we have. So I'm going to start with rescue medication. And the first tip is to try and stock up on this at this time of year. If you think you're going to have more migraines and it's also a little bit more difficult to access. But don't use it all at once. It's important to remember that with painkillers for migraine, if we take them on a regular basis for more than 10 days a month, they can actually start causing us to get more migraines. So although you've got lots of them, don't take them all together. There are a lot of useful painkillers, and some will be suitable for certain people, others will be suitable for other people. So before you start taking any painkillers, always just check with your pharmacist or your prescriber that it's okay and safe for you. But just to give a few examples, a lot of people with migraine benefit from higher dose aspirin. So we often use doses up to 900 milligrams of aspirin, or we use ibuprofen, 400 to 600 milligrams, or paracetamol. Generally, we're not so keen on the codeine-based medications in migraine because they can cause a bit of nausea, a bit more risky for causing that type of medication overuse headache. We also often use anti-sickness medications, either in combination with other things or sometimes even by themselves for migraine. And then we have a sort of a repository of specialist migraine tablets, things like sumatriptan, almatriptan, frovatriptan, elatriptan, all the triptans. And now we have some new ones called GPants as well. So all of those are acute medications. And then on the next slide, I've got a few tips about using your rescue medication. So tip number one is take it early. There's a little window of opportunity for the acute medication to work. And sometimes if you think, oh, is it going to be a headache? Is it going to be a migraine? And you leave it a bit too long, it can be really more difficult to get on top of the migraine. Tip number two is often a combination of tablets is needed to get the best result and to try and abort the migraine in the quickest possible time. I think sometimes we feel a bit reluctant to take too much medication, but there've been a lot of good studies now to show that if you actually hit the migraine hard at the very beginning, at the very start, perhaps by taking a painkiller as well as an anti-sickness, as well as a triptan, then in the long run, you end up using fewer medications than if you sort of drip feed it. So yeah, hit it hard and hit it with a lot of tablets at the start. Obviously not overdosing, but just using the different 3 types. And sometimes you need to have an increase in your rescue medication. So if you find that your migraine's not resolving quickly and all you've got is a painkiller and anti-sickness, then go and ask to also maybe try a triptan. If you've tried lots of triptans and none of them are effective for you, go and ask if you can try one of the new GPant medications. And next slide, please. So moving now to Preventive medication, which I did mention at the start. So as I said, this is medication that some people need to take on a daily basis to try and reduce the chance of a migraine breaking through. If you're on a preventer, as you'll know, unfortunately, it's not magic. It does not stop all the migraine attacks. We think that a good response is a preventer that would stop about half the migraine attacks. And the drawback of preventers, of course, is that there is the potential for side effects. So we don't start everybody on preventers because sometimes the risks outweigh the benefits. But generally speaking, a preventer might be needed if you're regularly getting 4 or more migraine days per month, or if you can't find acute medications that are working well for you, or if you've got such profoundly disabling migraines where you perhaps become paralyzed or something that the risks sort of become more worthwhile. Next slide, please. So preventive medications, it's always a difficult decision about deciding which one to use because they don't really come in an order. It's not like this is the strongest one and then you move on to the other ones. You pick the preventer sort of dependent on yourself, really. So it's do you have any other medical conditions? Are you taking any other medications that might interact? Do you have any lifestyle things? For example, do you want to get pregnant? There are certain medications you can and can't take. Do you need to drive? Do you do shift work? So between you and your GP or primary care professional that you're seeing about the migraine, you can have a discussion to pick the best one for you if prevention is needed. The names of the preventers I haven't put on here, but people will have perhaps used things like propranolol, amitriptyline, candesartan, topiramate. They're probably the 4 most commonly used preventers for migraine first line. If you're on a preventer and you've been taking it for years and your migraine is actually quite stable, so you're not having very frequent attacks and they respond to medications, it is okay to try weaning it down. And people get a bit scared about stopping something that they've been taking for ages. But about 70% of people can actually stop their preventer medication. I don't think I'd advocate doing it right now, just at this busy time of year, but it could be something to put on your list for the new year if you have been taking it for ages, just to try maybe speaking to your GP, don't do it yourself, but and see if they would support you just cutting it down slowly and seeing how you get on. If the migraine flares up, you just go back onto it. And then what do we do if the basic preventers that our GP can prescribe don't work for us? Well, that's the time to start asking for a specialist referral, because there are some new, sort of more preventive treatments that are available in specialist services. So we've had Botox for a while. Botox is unfortunately only for people who have 15 or more days of the month where they suffer with migraine. But there's also newer medications called GPants, which are tablets that can be taken each day. And what's called the CGRP monoclonal antibody injections. These are the new either injections into your tummy or actually one of them is given into the veins. And they're all available from specialists. Specialists are only allowed to prescribe them if you've already tried and failed on the basic preventers. Next slide, please. So how can your GP help? So I'm just going to talk about when you should see your GP. I've mentioned a few times before when I think it would be important, but we'll cover that again. And when perhaps other members of the primary healthcare team are going to be more helpful than booking in with the GP. So next slide, please. So yeah, navigating the primary care system, it's a bit of a minefield at the moment. Nobody likes it from either side. So appointment booking is tricky. It's important to find out from your own practice what their rules are. So sometimes the practice will only allow you to book on the day and you have to sort of ring up 8 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes you are able to book some appointments in advance. There's this strange idea that that we're not allowed to book people up for more than 2 weeks in advance at the moment, because the government will look at our appointment lists. And if we have, for example, if I see somebody and I think, great, I'd like to see you again in 4 weeks, if I book it for 4 weeks, the figures show that that person's been waiting for 4 weeks, not 2, so we get marked down on that. So it's all a bit strange at the moment. So we'll all just kind of try and navigate it and battle through as best we can. There is something called extended access clinics, which are really good. They're available in most areas. So these clinics are run at evening times and weekends. They are staffed by the regular GPs that work in that area. They have access to all your medical notes, just as your normal GP would, and they have ability to refer just as your normal GP would. So if you ring up and there's no appointments available, you could always ask the care navigator if there's an extended access appointment available, and quite often they can get you into these clinics, so that's worth knowing. And the next tip is, if you need medications, particularly around this time of year, put your medication request in good time. The medication requests now tend not to go to GPs, they tend to go to a pharmacy team. And the pharmacy team don't usually have emergency appointments. So it's, and sometimes their staffing levels will go down with annual leave around about this time. So just take extra care to order in good time at this time of year. When you decide you want to go and see the GP, just think about what you want to gain from that appointment, and jot a few notes down if that's helpful to you. As a GP, I really like it if somebody comes and tells me exactly what they want me to do, and we don't find it. I think people might worry that that would seem rude or something, but it absolutely isn't. So if you're coming because you're not sure what kind of a headache you've got and you think it's migraine, that's fine to say that. If you're coming because you've read about a new treatment and you want to try it, then it's absolutely fine to come and say that. And if you have a consultation that doesn't seem to go well and you think something's not right, it's absolutely fine to just book in for a second opinion with a different person. Nobody minds that. And also, you've got the resources from the Migraine Trust as well on the website or the helpline if you feel something's not quite right. Next slide, please. So hopefully that's been just one or two nuggets about the festive season, why it's tricky, what we can do to help ourselves, and how we can get the best out of the medical teams. So I shall open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Kay. That was really useful. I feel very much like that polar bear at the end. I don't know what that says about me, but I could have been a picture of myself. I know there's been lots of questions coming in, so I'll hand over to Oscar and we will try our best to get through them all. Please bear in mind this is a presentation about migraine at this time of the year, so they are the questions that we will be focusing on. If we don't manage to get to your question, I'm really sorry, but the helpline is open until 4 o'clock. So live chatters, emailers, phoners, send a carrier pigeon, whatever you want to do, we are here for you. But I do apologise if we don't get to your question. But like I say, we are here. And I'll hand over to Oscar.
Debs, and yeah, thank you, Kay, and thank you everyone as well. I love these because I love seeing all of your chatter and support with each other as well. I also don't think we've ever asked anyone where they're from as well, which I've really loved seeing just how spread out we are across the UK as well, which is lovely. And I think some non-UK has replied as well, which is fun to
Wow.
see. Yeah, so the first one, someone shared their experience with us actually, and then asked for some tips at the end. So I'll read that if that's okay, because I'm sure they won't feel alone in this. So they said they particularly struggle with heat and cold and light issues in the winter. So they find it difficult to get comfortable. It's difficult to go from being comfortable at home in their safe space to getting hot, putting on loads of clothes, to going cold outside and getting hot walking around, and sort of those constant temperature changes, and going to someone else's house, their heating, and sort of adjusting to different rooms and different spaces, and they end up feeling sort of weird and anxious and dizzy, and lots of migraine attacks. And different lightings as well. And it can just kind of lead to increased attacks, and you can't control the environments as much, and just that constant, temperature changes, light changes, and things. So just kind of any tips really. I know you obviously talked about avoiding where possible, but where unavoidable, any tips in terms of managing these temperature changes, these environment changes?
Yeah, I agree, and I completely empathise with that. The heat and cold is tricky. Like when you go into a warm environment, I think you get a bit dehydrated as well, and that doesn't help. And the light thing, I think so many people are going to really like empathize with that. It's not just the flashy Christmas lights, is it? It's even just the low sunlight when we do see the sunshine at this time of year, when it sort of comes through the railings and stuff, and you see that black white flickering. It's really triggering, isn't it? Um, so yeah, temperature change. It's difficult because you want to be able to participate and go and join people and go to other environments. I think layers, just sort of being prepared for it. It's about planning, isn't it? Unfortunately, we can't live in this perfect bubble all the time. So it's just sort of making adaptations as best we can. So sort of thinking about, right, okay, so I'm going to go to this person's house. I know they always keep it really warm. I'm going to wear my thick coat to get there because it's freezing outside, but then I'm going to make sure I take it off and I wear my t-shirt when I'm there. Have plenty to drink if you feel like it's the hot making you dehydrated. Yeah, and the light thing is tricky, really. Sometimes I just close my eyes when I'm walking past a fence and it's all flashy. Yeah, there's. I'm afraid there's no sort of magic solution.
Yeah.
Unless anybody else has tips they can share, it would be useful to know, actually.
I'm sure not alone of wearing sunglasses inside if I have to,
Mm-hmm,
things like
mm-hmm.
that. It's a
Yeah,
hard one to avoid, but if you need to, you need to. Yeah, a few people with their cameras holding up their
needs
sunglasses.
must. Yeah,
We do
yeah.
what we have to, yeah. And you're right, we kind of associate dehydration with heat, but actually cold weather can dehydrate us as well. So really important point remembering to yeah, keep up that and constant temperature where possible. Thank you. That's really helpful. So I don't know about anyone else, but I associate this season with food. Food is a
Mm.
big thing that the minute this hot season hits, it's all about food for me. That's one track mind. Are there any particularly common food triggers or drink triggers that people should avoid or be conscious of around this season? And any tips as well around preventing
Uh,
or managing?
Yeah, I mean, we know fizzy drinks and alcohol can be sort of quite triggering for a lot of people. I think if you've discovered a trigger, so if it's citrus fruit or if it's chocolate or if it's red wine, then yeah, you know that you kind of need to avoid that. Um, if you haven't discovered a food trigger, then the one thing I would say is don't spend loads of time and effort trying to find this sort of holy grail, this one thing that you can stop doing that will mean you don't ever get migraines again. Because I find so many people get so caught up in trying to sort of eliminate different things from their diet and different things from, not drinking certain things as well. Um, and actually, it's not usually fruitful. And the advice is that you're more likely to sort of get yourself malnourished if you start trying to avoid all these different dietary components. So if there's an obvious trigger, avoid it. But if not, then don't go searching for one would be my advice.
I think that's really, yeah, really important, particularly as we know that hunger is a big trigger. So actually, if you start altering your diet too much and avoiding food, then yeah. Just as a follow-up to that, just because it's quite interesting, I've not come across it. So someone said they're trying to keep their fluids up and they started having apple juice, but their migraine attacks have got a lot worse. Is this a coincidence? Is this something you've come across?
Not come across it with apple juice particularly before. No,
Mm,
no, but I'm absolutely could be, couldn't it? If you start substituting your apple juice for something different and you get better, then it was the apple juice, definitely.
yeah, perfect. Thank you. Um, so you talked quite a bit about acute medications. So absolutely something to have in your migraine rescue pack. Is there anything else from Christmas Day or festive celebrations that someone should have in their migraine rescue pack that you'd recommend having in there?
So do you mean like what medications to have in it, or do you mean
Just
other stuff other than medications?
anything, yeah, anything that should
Like,
come in your little, yeah. I'm picturing a little satchel that has your migraine rescue bag, but it can be anything that can be helpful to help people with their migraine. I assume they mean by that question. Just either medications or other remedies or coping mechanisms that can be helpful to have in their toolbox, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about having those tools in your toolbox before the time, isn't it? Because the medications you can, if you're struggling at this stage and you find that you don't have enough acute medication, it's not working for you. It's kind of best to act now and go and see somebody and discuss that and see if there's extra stuff that you can be given that's going to be helpful. And similarly with the psychological coping mechanisms, it's not something that you're going to be able to just learn on Christmas Day. So probably now's the time to look into stuff if you feel like it's a really stressful time for you, because that can obviously be the case for a lot of people. Think, okay, right, so how do I handle my stress? And do I need a little bit more advice about this? Because we all benefit from the expertise of the psychologists. There's a lot of stuff they think of that we just haven't thought of, and it might be really simple and straightforward. And yeah, if it's the light, have a pair of sunglasses in your rescue bag. If you know what your triggers are, then just don't be afraid to have those things with you. I think sometimes you feel really self-conscious, don't you, and embarrassed about it. But we're trying to remove all that stigma in the Migraine Trust, and we need to get the word out there. Migraine's really common. It affects 15 out of every 100 people. So the chances are there's going to be somebody else in the room who feels the same as you, who's going to empathise and be grateful to you for putting your sunglasses on and showing that that's okay. It's all normal and it's all good. And if you don't get that migraine, that's worth it.
Beautiful. I think a really important message as well. A few people have sent through some suggestions as well, and we know it's all
Yeah, I just saw
individualized,
one.
but
Yeah, electrolyte tablets. That's a good idea. Yeah, if that helps, that's
yeah,
great.
so yeah, electrolytes, cold packs. That's definitely one in my pack. Some people find heat instead. Time out to ourselves to lower the stress levels. I like that one. That's a conceptual one. Um, so someone else has said, can we do anything to speed up post-drone recovery periods? Is there anything we can do?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that it's probably important to make sure that you are on the best combination of medications to start with. So if you're having a lot of migraines or you're having prolonged post-dromes, it might push you into wanting to take preventive medications and kind of optimize that. Because if we can use preventive medications and stop some of the attacks happening in the first place, then you're not going to then have to battle with the post-drome as well. The acute medications, if taken in a strong combination earlier, sometimes can be helpful for that as well. I don't know of any other sort of secret methods. The post-drome is really all part of the migraine. So we kind of treat it in the same way that we would, treat people who were not getting prolonged post-dromes. There's nothing specifically different really about treating that.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Um, just a quick note, Janet. So you won't be able to come off mute. So I'm not sure if you're able to type your question in to the chat. I'm afraid it's disabled on Teams on sorry. Um, okay, let's have a little look at any more questions we've got. Um, so someone said their families, this was submitted before the event actually. So someone said that their family have asked how they can help them on the day should they have a migraine attack. Any tips on how, say, someone else has joined this account and they know someone with migraine, how someone externally can support someone with migraine when they're having an attack?
Yeah, I mean that's variable, isn't it? The thing about migraines is we all have different migraines. It's a different journey for everybody. So the things that might help one person might not always help other people. So it is quite individualized. So quite often allowing the person having the migraine attack to just have a little bit of peace and quiet is helpful, with some fluids and a place to go and take their medications. Um, and maybe also just kind of being aware before the event of the sort of things that might trigger that person's attack. So, just asking the person with migraine, what do you find is particularly triggering, and maybe trying to moderate the environment a little bit so that you try and reduce that person's triggers is really kind and thoughtful. Can't think of Any other trigger? I bet other people have got other good ideas on this as well.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if
Yeah,
anyone wanted to share any
it's kind of
experiences
nice having
someone's
the
done for
community.
you
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
helped, or
yeah,
things you hope or would like done for you.
yeah.
Yeah, would absolutely talk about that. That'd be some nice things to. Um, let's have a little look. Um, so someone has said, would triptans be contradicted in those with unmanaged high blood pressure, arrhythmias, chest pains, breathlessness, things like that?
Possibly, yeah. Triptans we can't use for people who've got uncontrolled high blood pressure. They are also not good. They're contraindicated in people who've had heart attacks or strokes. So that's why we were delighted that the new GPants have been developed, because they are acute medications that can be used in people with previous heart attack or stroke. We still are cautious about using those medications soon after a heart attack or stroke. But if you've been through life and you've been told by doctors that you can't have triptans because you've had a heart attack or a stroke, it is worth going to ask about the GPants and whether they're suitable for you. They've also been tried in people who are much older. The trials have included much older people than the triptan trials. So there's a little bit more security about prescribing those in older people. Um, they're still new tablets. We, could turn out to see potential side effects and risks down the line. But so far, they are appearing that they potentially could be more safe in those conditions.
You. Yeah, thanks. That's really helpful and hopefully clarified a few people that were asking the same question. So I don't know if anyone else has any sort of more festive related questions. I think that's all that we had kind of come in. There's been some lovely people sharing some nice stories of things that have been done for them as well, which is really nice about
Yeah,
helping get water and asking for okay and things, which is really nice to hear.
I like the
Um,
one about the Christmas lights on steady. That's
it's on
definitely
steady.
one that my kids won't do for me. They turn them on flashy just to annoy me.
You don't, even people without migraine, I don't know how some people are able to cope with some of those
Yeah,
settings. I
yeah,
put mine up
yeah.
last night and some of them are absolutely horrendous. So I don't know how anyone, anyway, we digress. So someone has actually just mentioned Christmas smells, and I think that's a really, yeah, there
Mm,
are some strong smells out
yeah,
there. And we can avoid them the best we can. We can maybe have a word with our family and our friends and ask them not to, but any coping mechanisms for Christmas or just general strong smells, or kind of any smells particularly that may be more triggering for migraine, and yeah, how to avoid them in
yeah.
general.
I think any strong smell can be really triggering, can't it? It doesn't, and there are. That's a really good point. There are loads around this time of year, and it's something that I hadn't thought of when I was preparing this talk. Again, I think it's really difficult, and you just have to be honest with your friends and family, don't you? And tell them that that's a strong trigger for you. But you can't avoid it if you go into a public place. Really, it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. And that's where things like unfortunately carrying around medications that may help or taking time away or yeah, having to unfortunately, yeah, take time out if need be, I
Yeah.
suppose. Um, great. Um, I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. I carry Vicks Vapor Rub, which I tolerate sniffing the mask. Yeah, so lots of things like
That's a
that
good
could be
idea.
really helpful. Um, brilliant. So let's have a little more questions. Um, So someone said, I started getting arrhythmias. Does this cause problems with me taking my sumatriptan? So I suppose that's a kind of follow-up question from what you said earlier, I suppose.
Yeah, heart rhythm disturbance is a bit of a different one, isn't it? You would probably just need to go and speak to your healthcare professional, because there's like lots of different types of rhythm disturbance. So I probably can't give an individual answer on that one, but definitely, yeah, go and check that it's
Yeah.
safe for you.
So a lot of the questions left are quite specific to the individual left, which I think are better kind of posed to us at the helpline where we can properly explore your particular situation, I think, because a lot of them we might need to find out a little bit more information about what's going on to be able to best advise, I think, rather than sort of offering general advice. But Um, I think, let me, sorry, it's quite difficult when all the questions are flying in. Right, I do love all of the interactions, but yeah, there's quite a few questions rolling in.
I'm loving all
Um,
the advice from everybody who is helping each other out.
yeah,
I think this is the most session we've had, the most helpful session we've had between people. So it's really great to see. But like Oscar says, if anybody has specific questions about medication or diagnosis or anything, then please contact us on the helpline or on live chat, because we are just trying to keep these questions to specifically about the festive period. So if nobody has any further questions on that, we will wrap up and let you
we've
get an extra 10 minutes
we've just
back, but
had
you're going to
one
stop me,
more.
aren't you?
We've just had one more flow in, so I will let that one happen. One more about that's relevant to the festive season about weather, which is a really good one actually. So, just asking about how sort of barometric fluctuations and how general kind of weather might impact migraine. If we know sort of what impact and what we should be looking out for that might be particularly triggering for migraine when it comes to winter weather.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think everyone's going to have a different experience of this. I personally, I don't like the thunderstorms in the summertime, and you don't get so much of that around the winter period, do you? It's more just the really. I think the first question about the cold and then the hot and the fluctuation in temperature seems a bit more sort of a prominent trigger around this time of year. But definitely, migraine is sensitive to changes in barometric pressure. There must be lots of clever things going on in your brains that we don't know about. Got lots of sensors in there, and when you have a migrainous brain, it's super sensitive to everything.
Yeah, agreed. I know that I can always predict when there's a storm coming
Mm,
because immediately my head starts going cloudy and I know there's a migraine attack on its way. Like I should start become a weather forecaster to be honest, because I can pre-predict before it happens. But yeah,
yeah,
um, but I know we're all different, and other people find hot weather more triggering in a way that I don't. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gail. I'll pass you back to Debs now because I think, as she said, some of the questions now are maybe a little bit more specific. But I would urge you to reach out to myself and Steph on the helpline. We're more than happy to help you. They're really interesting questions, and I'd love to talk to you more about them.
Thanks, Oscar, and thanks so much, Kay. A really useful session. I'm loving all the suggestions. Just really, really great to see people interacting with each other and offering hints and tips to each other. So thank you all for joining. You will be getting evaluation in an email. If you could fill it in, we would really appreciate it. It really helps us to shape the sessions that we're running in the future. We are also taking part in the Big Give Christmas Challenge as well. So all donations that are made to the organisation from now until next Tuesday will be doubled. So if anybody did want to give as little or as much as they can, we'd be incredibly grateful, because like I say, they're going to be doubled by Big Give right up till next Tuesday. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much. Have a safe and enjoyable rest of your day, and enjoy the holiday period if you can control all the things that we've talked about today. But it's lovely to see you, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.